How's it going, everyone? This is Crops, aka Beast Beats, and I'm coming at y'all with my Saber deck list from locals this past Sunday. I went 2-1. It was only 8 people, so smaller locals. But we got second, not first. But hey, you can't win them all. This is based on Prostorm's Saber list. This was in my Discord, and I think E3 Yugioh or Keegan uploaded something about it. But let's just hop right in. So this is what I played. We're gonna start with the monsters. We had 3 XX Saber Full Helm Knight. This is probably one of the better X Saber monsters in the entire deck. It's not the highest stat line, but what it does is when it destroys an opponent's defense position monster, you can summon a level 4 or lower X Saber from your grave. And also, once while he's on the field, you can negate any attack that the opponent's monster declares. And he's a tuner and warrior. And you'll notice they're pretty much all Earths. So there's 3 XX Saber Fault Troll. This is your combo piece. Basically, the way this guy works, if you control 2 face-up X Sabers, whether it's XX or X, it's basically the same thing. You'll notice there's some names with just 1 X and some with 2, none with triple X, except maybe the thumbnail. You drop this guy, and basically what he does is he special summons a level 4 lower X Saber from the graveyard as well, except he's just level 6. But the fact he's Earth and 24, 18, decent stat line, you can also go into some of the big synchros in the extra deck. So I feel like you definitely want 3 of both of those. Also, we have to pretty much play 3 Air Bellums. You don't really like to draw this card. This is the Wolverine of the deck. Basically, it's another level 3 Beast Tuner. The fact it's Beast, though, makes it a Rescue Cat target. Not the greatest defense, but 1600. When it inflicts damage by a direct attack, you discard a card out of your opponent's hand. You do a lot of hand looping in this deck. Pretty evil. So you have to play 3 because, again, if you draw 1 and you play 2, then your Rescue Cats just went much worse. Also 3, so you notice a lot of 3-ofs. You want those X Saber names on the field. Of XX Saber Emmer's Blade. This is an insect, kind of a funny type, because if your opponent has Verdant Sanctuary, you can add this if they kill one, but you don't really want to add them to your hand, you want them in the grave. It's a 1300 by 800 defense. Not a tuner, which matters because you need some amount of non-tuners, or else you can't really do the synchros outside of Gothams. This is a recruiter, so when you're destroyed by battle and sent to grave, you can special summon any level 4 or lower X Saber from your deck, including itself, and either attack or defense position. You get to decide. Unlike Giant Rat or those recruiters that have to be in face-up attack position. Now for one-ofs, Saber-wise, just 1 X Saber Galahad, we call him Galachad. He's a 1800 by 800. Cool rarity, not that that matters. Basically, when he attacks, he gains 300. So a lot of our guys are small, it's 1300, 1300, 1600. But this guy goes to 21. So he gets over things like Elemental Hero Alias, Stratos, those kind of things. And however, when he's attacked, he goes down to 1300 for some reason. I don't know why they had to add that aspect. He does have another little niche effect where you can tribute a Saber monster if he's being attacked and negate that attack. And he's not a tuner, level 4 warrior again. So he is a target for Ember's Blade. 1 XX Saber Ragigura, Ripple Raggy. Sometimes people play 2 of these. I just went with 1. He's a level 1. That's how you get into Armory Arm with the level 3 tuners. And then when he's normal or special summoned, you can add any X Saber monster from your grave to your hand, including Fault Troll. Where the heck is he? There he is. So the fact you can if this is in your grave, you can use him to add this back is pretty good. Allows you to keep comboing off and do different extra deck plays. That is it for the X Sabers. The last bit of monsters is going to be, speaking of, 3 Giant Rat. So this guy just helps you get into almost any monster in your deck. That's, of course, 1500 or less. You can either float into itself, into a Full Helm Knight, into a Ragigura, into Ember's Blade, which is your usual targets, or you could technically also float into, of course, the kitty, the Rescue Cat. This is an insane card in this deck because it lets you combo off by immediately summoning 2 Ember's Blades. Sorry, not Ember's Blades, 2 Air Bellums, and then that lets you immediately drop Fault Troll, and that's kind of how the combo usually starts, with hopefully an Ember's Blade in the grave. And it doesn't negate the effects in Edison format, so that's something important to remember. Another rat target, technically, is Morphing Jar. Obviously, you don't almost ever rat into this, but you can if you have a Book of Moon set, because then you could rat to this, and then you could Book of Moon it, and then since it's flip, it will get its flip effect. Both players discard their entire hand and draw 5 cards. So a lot of high variance in this card, but I think it's, in a combo deck, very powerful. And the final monster in the deck, the dog, Raikou, Lightsworn Hunter. The only reason we play one of this is as another cat target. Because if you draw 2 Arabellums, then now you can't cat anymore unless you play this. And Mills 3 pops a card. I don't want to draw this really, and some people play like 2. That makes maybe more sense if you play Hamster, but since we're not on Hamster, I think just 1's fine, especially with all the Book of Moons. On to the spells. We got 1 Rhoda. This is like Full Helm Knight number 4, but you can also add Galachad, so another fun target. Then we got 2 Upstarts, just more consistency. I know you can play 3, unlike GOAT format, but I don't really want to give my opponent more than 10,000. I think there's like a combo in this deck where you can put 10,000 damage on board. So if you put them to 11,000, they get another turn, which probably won't matter because you're probably looping the whole hand. But then the last bit of the consistency cards, so Rhoda, 2 Upstarts, 2 Gold Sarcophagus. Basically, if you don't know this card, you banish a card in your second standby phase after, you add it to your hand. Usually you're getting either Cat, Fault Troll, or a Sweeper. What Sweeper am I talking about? Well, it could be Heavy, could be Cold Wave, more than likely, or more than likely one of these 2, I guess, Giant Trunade. Bounce all spell and traps to the hand. Neither player can activate spell or traps until your next turn. Destroy all spell and traps on the field. So just wipe out all the spell and traps so your plays go uninterrupted, and you can like loop their whole hand, hopefully. It's kind of degenerate, but that's what the deck wants to do a good amount of the time. Brain Control, Mind Control. So many tuners, I feel like this card is important. Basically, obviously this card can still these games, and this card, you can take flips, like if your opponent has a set Raikou or Hamster, you can take it, flip it, get a benefit, and then use like a tuner, sink into like a 7, like your, what is it, Urbellum, I believe. And we'll get to the extra deck here soon. So just 2 cards, of course you can only play 1, you probably would play more if you could. Same with Level Area B. This is another one of, you can only play 1. Change all level 4 or higher monsters to defense. So most of your guys are level 3. You want your opponent's level 4s to go to the defense, because most have lower than 1,300 defense. So then it lets you get over it, bring back a monster from grave, attack with that, and you can just floodgate them out with that continuous. So those are kind of the power 1-ofs. Now for the 3-ofs, we have 3 Book of Moon. This card right here is probably one of the best cards for Full Helm Knight, and it's good for offense and defense. So just put a monster face down, and hopefully you can either attack over it or put your own guy down for defense if you attack into like a D prison or a Mirror Force. Now also 3 Enemy Controller. So it's not quite the same as Book of Moon, but you can change the battle position of a monster your opponent controls. In the tournament, my opponent had a set Dandelion, and I attacked into it with Raikou. It was a final countdown. I attacked into it with Raikou, the Danny flipped up, and then I econned their Danny to attack and used their own Lava Golem to kill it for game. So that was kind of cute. But you can also attribute your own monster, take one of your opponent's monsters until the end phase. And so it's kind of neat. I may consider cutting this down to 2, just so you can fit another. That's it for the spells. Gotham's Emergency Call. This card obviously is one of the better cards in the deck. You don't want to draw it necessarily too early because it can be a brick, but being able to just reborn 2 monsters from your grave without any downside, as long as you control a face-up X-Saber, is insane. It does get stopped by DB Crow, games like 2 and 3, or if they're nasty enough and main it. But basically, you can play 3 of this, and most people always pretty much do. But the reason I'm only playing 1, although I'm probably going to bump it up to 2, is the final 2 cards in the deck are Royal Decree. This card says negate all trap effects on the field. So it stops all of the traps. We don't want traps to interrupt our Recruiter crashing and our Full Helm Knight getting over, and then our combo where we go like Cat and Fault Troll, Reborn. It just gets crazy. And we don't want like a Torrential, Mirror Force, those kind of cards stopping us. Of course, it also means we're not playing them to counter our opponent, but it is what it is. That's it for the 40 card main deck. Onto the extra deck. It's kind of a tight 15. There's our Bluff Force token, gotta bluff it. Starting off, no fusions, all synchros, because we're not siding Sidras in this particular build. 2 armory arms. You want the second. I don't think it came up in the tournament, but basically this guy is part of a lot of like OTKs and just gets you a lot of burn damage in. You can basically make your level 3s get really big under level limit and attack over pretty much anything the opponent has in defense mode. So that's just a nice access. Also machine, so you have to be careful about keeping that out if they have Chimera Tech. For the 5s, we have 1 Cataster and 1 Android. You don't make 5s too often. You do have the Jar and the Raiko. So with the level 3 tuner, you get access to these. This is obviously nice for outing like opposing recruiters, anything that's non-dark. And then this, it's just nice to be able to crash into a Caius potentially, or gain the 600 in time, that kind of thing. So I like to have the options for the 5s. And of course the 6s, you gotta have Brio. This card is insane and part of an infinite hand loop, potentially. And Goyo Guardian. You know, the fact it's Earth could matter with the Gotems, but also being able to steal opponents' monsters and really just, overtake the most broken synchro in the format. I don't think I need to explain that anymore. The final 6, though, that you'll pretty much only exclusively get to play in X Sabers is XXX Saber, High on Lay. So 23 by 13, okay stat line, but what this thing does, it says when it's synchro summoned, target up to 3 spell and traps your opponent controls, destroy them. Or sorry, not even opponent, on the field. You can pop your own level limit and stuff. So this card right here just really makes for some broken plays. Some people play 2. I can't afford a second ulti. No. It's actually kind of a pricey card. I've only had 1 come up so far, so hopefully 1 works. For the 7s, we got X Saber Urbellum, gotta play it. So dumb that it has lower attack than this one, but is higher level. That's kind of silly. But he has a decent effect. If they have 4 or more cards in their hand and he does damage, you put 1 back on top. So you set your opponent back a turn, which is always nice. And he's an X Saber name. Black Rose, go boom. That's it for the 7s. You could consider Ancient Fairy just to have another hedge against dragons, which is a brutal matchup. The way to beat dragons, I found out, is level limit and gravity bind. The 8s, we got 1 Stardust, 1 Colossal, also good against dragons and decks of that nature. 1 Dark End, this did come up. There was against the final countdown where I made Cataster and then used Arabellum, or one of the level 3 tuners with Cataster to make this. And then that allowed me to out like a Marshmallow or something. So it can come up, pretty helpful. And that's it for the 8s, just 3 8s. You could consider Thought Ruler, Archfiend, cards like that. Now for the 3 9s, we have XX Saber Gotems, not 1, but 2. You definitely don't need a 3rd. It's just, not only is it a nice looking card, it's also big, 31 by 26. You can make it with 3 tuners, which most people don't necessarily always know. And his effect is insane. Tribute 1 X Saber monster, including himself. Discard a random card from opponent's hand. Not once per turn. So you can potentially loop your opponent's entire hand, which is always devastating. If you've ever been hand looped in Yu-Gi-Oh, it doesn't feel good. And finally, Mistworm. Speaking of looping hand, right, it's not often you go into both of these, but it is possible. This bounces up to 3 cards your opponent controls to the hand. And it's a 25, so you can just get in there hopefully for lethal. So you want that utility. And finally, for the side deck, last 15 cards, we got 2 Concentrated Light, Orb, F Black Wings. No, basically this thing just says neither player can normal or special summon dark monsters. Dark monsters cannot attack, and also it cannot be destroyed by dark monsters. So just really oppressive against the popular dark decks. 1 Sword Fight, Beast Rope Dipper. No, I'm kidding. This is Gladiator Beast the Quarry. I don't think I have a real copy, so right now this is just a substitute, it's fake. Glad's a really tough matchup, so being able to either econ, brain one of their Glads, and then, or swap, which we'll see in a second. You can attack with their Gladiator Beast and actually tag it out into your own. So it gets rid of their threat and gives you this one. So that's a nice utility against a bad matchup. 1 swap, you could consider more because you're on 6 recruiters and Ragigura and some builds if you play Sangan. But I decided just 1's okay. It's not the greatest card, but we do have basically, I guess, Econ number 4 or BrainCon, MindCon number 3, whatever you want to say. 2 My Body's a Shield. You pay 1,500 to negate something that's destroying your monsters, because we want to keep our monsters on board to have the names. So usually I'd put this in against something like Black Wings, again, to counter Icarus attack. Really good counter to that card. And Mirror Force, Torrential, anything like that. A Black Rose, Judgment Dragon, you can just play into quickly, which is nice, or without as much fear of it. 2 Prohibition. This card, obviously, the better you are at the game, the better this card gets. Hero Beat can be a difficult matchup, so calling Alias is nice. Shuts off like 10% of the deck, like Hero Blast, Gemini Spark, Alias, cards like that. And you can also Prohibition and like maybe Frogs, called Treeborn or something, to try and mitigate the Monarchs, which is another brutal matchup for this deck. Then we have the 1-trap Death Shoot. So if we're not needing Decree, the opponent doesn't play too many traps, we can side into some of our own traps, one of the most broken traps in the game, as well as 2 Light Imprisoning Mirror, because Fairies and Lightsworn can be tough again, so we do want 2 of those, because they don't usually, especially Lightsworn, don't play too many traps. So it's nice to be able to side into Light Mirror against those matchups. The Gravity Bind, MVP against Dragons, and any just big deck that has like beaters that you have trouble dealing with. And the fact that, again, it's the level 4 Hurricane attack, it's similar to Level Limit. It just doesn't move them to defense, so they can still be a pain in the butt to attack over. But you just hope to find your way out with like Armory Arms or something. Solemn Judgment, combo as well with Trap Death Shoot, and really good against those Monarch matchups, as well as the final 2 traps on the side being Saber Holes. I would probably make these Pulling the Rugs, because it's just a much safer card than this. But basically, if you control a face-up X-Saber, you negate the summon of an opponent's monster and destroy it. This is mostly for things like Monarchs, Glads. Of course, you can't use Pulling the Rug as effectively against Gladiator Beast, but at least this stops those. But again, Pulling the Rug would probably be better, because it would stop Glads, even if you don't have your face-up X-Saber. That was it for the side deck. You could consider things like Tragodia in the main as well. I think that's gonna wrap up the deck profile. So don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Until next time, this has been Craps at KB Speeds, signing out.